Welcome to HFY Sci-Fi Love and War Story. In today's story, we explore the haunting journey of a group of elite mercenaries who face an enemy they can't understand, let alone defeat. Led by Commander Veric, they are tasked with securing a mining facility on the remote world of Tarsus IV, but they quickly learn that their mission isn't what it seems. What they thought would be an easy contract turns into a battle for survival against a team of humans who, despite their fragile appearance, are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Will Veric and his crew manage to overcome their misunderstanding of humanity's true power? Or will they fall victim to the very forces they were hired to fight? The truth unfolds in this gripping tale, where the lines between good and evil blur, and every decision could mean the difference between life and death. As Commander Veric stood at the front of the briefing room, the dim lighting accentuated the sharp, metallic gleam of his dark-scaled skin. His four eyes blinked in perfect unison, each motion precise, scanning the room filled with the galaxy's most feared mercenaries. The holographic displays around him flickered, casting a soft blue glow on the faces of the assembled warriors. These were beings who had stared death in the face countless times and walked away victorious, yet today, a tense silence filled the air. Something was off, and unease neither the reptilian Saurans, the armored Valyrians, nor the cold, calculated Krell had ever felt before. The job Veric presented to them was straightforward: 5 million credits for clearing out a mining facility on Tarsus IV. A simple assignment on the surface, with no mention of the dangers lurking beneath. Veric's voice sliced through the silence, deep and deliberate, as he adjusted the holographic display with a swipe of his claw. We go in, clear out the facility, and leave. Simple. Drax, the hulking Valyrian, leaned forward, his thick armor plates clinking. His mandibles clicked in anticipation, but a flicker of concern danced in his eyes. Who's holding it? His voice held more than curiosity, it was a warning. Veric hesitated, his mind already knowing the reaction this answer would provoke. The tension in the room thickened. A small team of humans. 7 of them, according to our intel. A stunned silence swept over the room. The usual hardened mercenaries exchanged uncertain glances. Humans? 7 of them? Against 22 of them? Humans? Krell, the ever-quiet lieutenant, spoke from the back. His cybernetic eye blinked, its faint red glow catching Veric's attention. From Earth? Veric nodded, his expression tight. Yes, human special forces. The room erupted in disbelief. 3 mercenaries shot to their feet, their heavy boots thudding on the floor as they moved toward the exit. Where are you going? Veric demanded, his voice laced with frustration. Find someone else, one of them, a reptilian Sauran, snarled, his tongue flicking in disdain. I don't fight Deathworlders. The door hissed shut behind them with a soft, final click. Veric cursed under his breath. This was the 3rd time he'd presented the contract, and each time, he lost more team members. But the 5 million credits were too good to pass up, too tempting for most mercenaries to resist. They're just humans, Veric muttered, trying to regain control. Soft-skinned. No claws. No natural armor. There are only 7 of them, and 22 of us. You've never faced them before, have you? Krell's voice interrupted. His tone was quiet, but there was an unmistakable weight to it. Veric turned his attention to him. The lieutenant's cybernetic eye glowed faintly, giving off a faint, eerie red hue as he leaned forward, speaking in an almost whisper. They're from a death world. Veric raised an eyebrow, his curiosity piqued. Death world, he repeated, the words unfamiliar to him, but they hung in the air like a challenge. Yes, Krell continued, his voice thick with unspoken history. Their planet should be uninhabitable, extreme temperatures, high gravity, thousands of predators, diseases, natural disasters, yet they survived it all. They've adapted to the harshest environments imaginable. Veric paused, his claws tapping against the control panel in deep thought. Which is why they're paying us so well, he said after a moment, trying to push the doubt from his mind. But remember, we have the advantages. Superior strength, natural weapons, better technology. But Krell wasn't finished. His voice took on a more serious edge. It's not about physical strength. These humans are different. They don't fight like other species. Different how? A recruit, newly hired, asked, confusion evident in his voice. Krell's face grew grave. They never stop. His eyes flicked around the room, locking onto the faces of the mercenaries one by one. Most species retreat when wounded. Humans, they keep fighting. Most species avoid pain. Humans push through it. And they're clever. They see patterns, opportunities, and weaknesses others miss. Veric felt a chill run down his spine. He'd heard stories of humans in the galaxy, stories that painted them as cunning, almost mythical in their survival. But never in his wildest dreams did he think they'd be up against one. Veric adjusted the display on the table with a flick of his claws, pulling up the schematics of the mining facility. That's why we're bringing extra firepower. We'll approach from multiple entry points. No matter how tough these humans are, they can't be everywhere at once. But despite his bravado, a lingering doubt now clouded his thoughts. The mercenaries sat still, listening, but the nervous tension in the room was unmistakable. For the first time, some of them began to question the simple mission they had been given. The mercenary ship drifted through the void of space, a hum vibrating through the walls as its sleek metal body sliced through the starry expanse. Veric, commander of the mission, sat at the navigation console, his four eyes flicking across the various readouts. The ship, though high-tech and battle-ready, felt unusually still, a heavy silence hanging in the air. His crew moved around him with a sense of urgency, but there was a palpable unease that no one could shake. Tarsus IV, the mining facility, loomed ahead, but the threat they were about to face felt distant yet pressing. Veric's claws clicked against the control panel as his mind wandered to the 7 humans they were set to face. The intel on them was sparse, but what little there was didn't inspire confidence. The humans were small, no claws, no fangs, no visible natural armor. Yet, as he reviewed their personnel files, a sense of discomfort settled in his gut. These soft-skinned primates had a reputation that sent even the galaxy's most seasoned mercenaries scrambling for cover. They weren't just soldiers, they were survivors. One by one, the crew members walked past Veric, but they all seemed to sense it. That same tension, as if the very air had become thick with doubt. Veric glanced at Krell, his lieutenant, who stood at the back of the ship's quiet viewing room. The lieutenant's sharp, glowing cybernetic eye scanned the hollow emptiness of space outside, his thoughts clearly miles away. Krell's low voice broke the silence as he activated the ship's holographic display, accessing classified footage from a frontier outpost on Epsilon Prime. The screen flickered to life, showing a scene from 3 cycles ago. The footage was grainy, but the intensity was undeniable. Humans, 4 of them, facing off against a group of raiders, heavily outnumbered, 15-1. Watch how they move. Krell's voice was tight, but there was an unmistakable edge of respect in it. He pointed to the screen. They communicate without speaking. Hand signals. Body language. It's like they're one with the environment. The mercenaries gathered around the display, their collective gaze fixed. The image on the screen showed a human female, small and seemingly frail, standing against 3 heavily armed raiders. She was cornered, but her movements were fluid, elegant in a way that felt alien to those watching. In mere seconds, the woman had disabled all 3 of the attackers, using their own strength and momentum against them. "She's half their size," whispered one of the younger mercenaries, his voice filled with disbelief. "How can she do that?" Krell's eye glinted as he spoke, his tone almost reverential. "Humans don't fight with size," he explained, his voice low. "They fight with technique. Thousands of years of combat traditions, refined and adapted. They fight smart, not hard." The footage continued, showing the humans adapting to every new challenge with calculated precision. One of them, a human male, was shot in the shoulder during a skirmish. The mercenaries expected him to collapse, to fall back, or to seek cover. But instead, the human switched hands and kept fighting, pressing forward without hesitation. His face showed pain, but there was no sign of retreat. "That's not possible," Drax muttered in awe, his mandibles clicking in disbelief as he watched the human continue to fight, unyielding in the face of the wound. "They compartmentalize pain," Krell explained with a deep, serious tone. "Their nervous systems are different from ours. they can ignore injuries that would stop other species in their tracks. Their bodies keep going, unbroken. The footage shifted, showing a human male cornered by 5 raiders. There was no room for escape, and yet, the human didn't flinch. Instead, he used his surroundings. He triggered an old and used mining drill, which exploded in a blinding flash of light. The explosion disabled the raiders long enough for the human to overpower them. It wasn't just about strength or weapons, the human had used the environment itself as a weapon. See that? Krell's voice was tight with growing respect. They don't fight like other species. They think. They can read situations in a way no one else can. They create opportunities. The mercenaries stood in stunned silence, their eyes glued to the screen. The room was eerily quiet, save for the faint hum of the ship's systems. Drax was the first to speak again, his voice low, almost reverential. They're fighters. But they're also survivors. They adapt, Krell continued, his tone heavy with the weight of his own experiences. Not just in battle, but in life. Earth's environment is a death world: extreme temperatures, violent weather, diseases, and thousands of predators. Yet, they survive. They've adapted to every challenge their planet throws at them, and now they bring that resilience into battle. The mercenaries exchanged glances, their earlier confidence slowly melting away, replaced by a rising unease. These humans, Krell said quietly, his cybernetic eye glowing faintly, are different. And that's why we have to be careful. They'll never stop fighting. They'll fight with everything they have, even when it seems impossible. Veric stood still for a moment, the image of the human fighters still burning in his mind. His claws tightened around the control panel, a low growl rumbling in his throat. Then we'll make sure they don't have a chance to fight, he muttered, but even as he spoke, he felt the weight of doubt settling on his shoulders. In that moment, Veric realized something: they weren't facing just any species. They were facing humans, the survivors of a world that had tried to destroy them, and had failed. The hum of the mercenary ship softened as it decelerated, the Tarsus IV mining facility growing larger against the backdrop of dark space. Veric stood on the bridge, his claws tapping nervously against the console. His usual confidence had begun to slip, replaced by a growing sense of unease. The Krell's warnings echoed in his mind. The footage of the humans' combat skills played over and over in his thoughts like a grim prophecy. He had thought they were just humans, soft-skinned, primitive creatures, but now he knew the truth. These beings were different. They had adapted to their harsh environment in ways that no species should have been able to. He stared out at the rugged, barren landscape of Tarsus IV, the mining facility standing like a lone fortress in the distance. The facility's architecture was utilitarian and harsh, metallic structures rising against the dust, surrounded by the desolation of the planet. The exterior walls of the complex were built with thick reinforced steel, designed to withstand hostile environments. But inside, the humans had turned the facility into a labyrinth of death for anyone foolish enough to step inside. Inside the mining complex, Major Helena Vega and her team were already preparing. The humans were aware of the mercenaries' approach, and they had been waiting for this moment. The miners, those who worked within the facility's depths, had already neutralized Veric scouts. No shots were fired, no loud confrontations. Instead, the humans used their environment, shadows, silent traps, and sharp, calculated movements to incapacitate the mercenaries one by one, without ever revealing themselves directly. It was all so deliberate, so planned. Veric had underestimated them, and now, his soldiers would pay the price. Stay sharp, Veric ordered, his voice low, though his mind raced. The mercenaries had positioned themselves, preparing for the inevitable breach. The plan had been simple: break through the outer defenses, flush the humans out, and secure the facility. But he hadn't expected what followed. Explosions rocked the facility's outer walls, sending dust and debris flying into the air. A fireball erupted from the facility's north wing, the shockwave vibrating through the mercenary ship. Veric felt a knot of tension tighten in his stomach. "Move out," he barked, the orders coming instinctively. The mercenaries poured out of the ship, their footsteps heavy against the cracked ground of Tarsus IV, the air dry and thick with the acrid scent of burning metal. They advanced cautiously, rifles raised, scanning the shadows for any signs of movement. Krell was with them, his cybernetic eye flicking from one dark corner to another, a quiet murmur escaping his lips. "Something's wrong," he muttered, his voice like gravel. "I don't like this." Veric ignored him, pushing forward with all the force of his training and pride. But each step felt like it led them deeper into an unknown maze. The facility's once solid structure had been transformed. What Veric had thought was a straightforward target turned into something much more dangerous. Bunkers, hidden tunnels, and explosive devices lay in wait. The mercenaries' steps were now measured, hesitant. The humans, it seemed, had anticipated every move. As the mercenaries pushed forward, they found themselves in the first trap. A section of the floor suddenly collapsed beneath them, sending 5 soldiers plummeting into a deep pit. The walls were slick with industrial foam, quick-setting and deadly, hardening almost instantly. They couldn't move, couldn't escape. The mercenaries who remained on the surface hesitated, then moved to cover their fallen comrades, only to find that the automated mining equipment had been activated without warning. Razor-sharp sorting arms descended from above, catching the mercenaries in their mechanical grip, trapping them like insects in a web. Other mercenaries scrambled to free their comrades, but they were ensnared in storage containers that had been reprogrammed into weapons. The humans, it seemed, had turned every piece of the facility into a tool of destruction. Veric's mind raced as chaos unfolded before him. The team's coordination had been flawless, no shots fired, no direct engagement, but the mercenaries were systematically neutralized, each of their moves anticipated. Veric clenched his jaw, fury mixing with disbelief. He hadn't even seen the humans yet. He had assumed they would fall apart, scatter under the pressure. But they were waiting, each step they took in complete control. The humans were hunting them. Krell's voice cut through Veric's thoughts, a low warning that he could no longer ignore. "The humans are hunting us," Krell muttered, the words barely audible as he scanned the facility's layout. His tone was grave, a deep understanding of the threat that Veric had yet to grasp fully. Veric's heart sank as he realized the truth. Krell had warned him. This wasn't just a mission to eliminate weak targets. This was a battle against beings who knew how to fight with the very environment around them. They were strategic, adaptable, and ruthless. "This is their world," Krell continued quietly, his voice reverberating in Veric's ear. "They don't need to be stronger. They don't need to be faster. They just need to be smarter." The real dilemma had set in. Veric's arrogance and overconfidence had clouded his judgment. The humans were not just mercenaries to be eliminated, they were survivors, trained to think differently, to move and adapt when their lives were on the line. Veric's mind raced. His crew was being picked off, one by one, and still, they hadn't seen a single human face. A voice crackled over his communicator, breaking the silence. "They're not defending themselves," the voice of one of the remaining mercenaries crackled. "They're waiting for us to come to them, and we're falling right into their hands." Veric's fist slammed into the panel. This wasn't just an assault, it was a hunting ground. The dust in the air settled slowly, coating everything in a thin layer of grime as the chaos of battle came to a temporary halt. Veric stood in the center of the wreckage, his scales darkened with frustration. His team, once strong and confident, now lay scattered around him, wounded, lost, or incapacitated by the traps that had been set by the humans. His mind raced, but one thought lingered at the forefront: failure. He had been so certain. He had expected the humans to be no more than easy targets, but he had grossly misjudged the nature of the creatures from Earth. As the quiet settled over the now damaged mining facility, Krell approached Veric. The lieutenant's normally stoic expression was replaced by something far more serious. His cybernetic eye flickered as he examined the surrounding area, the glow casting an eerie red hue on his face. Without saying a word, Krell activated the holographic display on his wrist. The images flickered to life, revealing the inside of the facility, and what it really contained. "This isn't a mining operation, Veric," Krell's voice was low, almost heavy with the weight of what he had discovered. "It's a medical research station." Veric stared at the screen, unable to comprehend what he was seeing. The facility wasn't filled with the raw materials he had been led to believe. Instead, there were medical chambers, lab equipment, and research data scattered across the sterile environment. Data streams on the screen revealed a complex molecular structure being studied by humans. It wasn't just any research, it was work on a cure. A cure? Veric muttered under his breath, his mind reeling. For what? Krell's gaze hardened. The humans were developing a cure for the plague. A deadly disease ravaging the outer colonies. Their employer, Nexus Corporation, sent us here under false pretenses. They didn't want to secure resources. They wanted to destroy humanity's best chance at survival. Veric's heart sank. The betrayal hit him like a physical blow. Nexus Corporation had lied to him and his team. They had sent these mercenaries to destroy the research, to eliminate the very hope that could save thousands, perhaps millions, of lives across the galaxy. For a moment, Veric stood frozen, staring at the display. His entire sense of purpose as a mercenary had been based on a lie. He had believed that his mission was to secure the area, to do his job as a mercenary. But in reality, he had been nothing more than a pawn in a much larger, darker game, one that was being played by the very corporation that had promised him wealth and glory. Krell continued, his voice steady but carrying the weight of a painful truth. The humans knew what they were protecting. And they let us walk right into their traps. It was never about resources, Veric. They were protecting a cure that Nexus didn't want to see the light of day. They needed this research destroyed, and they used us to do it. Veric's mind reeled with the implications of Krell's words. He felt a cold rage boiling inside him, but it was not directed at the humans. No, they had been playing the long game, and they had won. It was Nexus he was angry with, for deceiving him, for manipulating his entire crew into doing their bidding without them even knowing the true purpose of the mission. The sound of footsteps interrupted his thoughts, and Veric turned to see Major Helena Vega step forward from the shadows. Her expression was calm, but there was a quiet intensity in her eyes, a look of determined resolve. "You've seen it now, haven't you?" she asked, her voice steady but piercing. "You've seen what we were protecting. The cure for the plague that Nexus created." Veric opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. The realization was settling in, heavy and suffocating. How had they all been so blind? Krell had warned them, but Veric had brushed off the warning, convinced that the humans were nothing more than a minor threat. But now, he could see it clearly. Nexus Corporation had caused this suffering. They were the ones who had created the plague, and now they were trying to bury the cure. "We didn't come here to kill you," Vega continued, her gaze unwavering. "We came here to stop them. We knew what Nexus was doing, and we couldn't let them succeed. You were just the hired muscle, Veric. But now, you've seen the truth. You've seen what we were trying to protect." Veric's claws flexed involuntarily as he clenched his fists, feeling a deep sense of betrayal that stretched far beyond his crew's losses. His pride, his entire identity as a mercenary commander, had been shattered. He had thought of himself as strong, calculating, but now he realized he had been nothing more than a pawn in a larger scheme. "I didn't know," Veric muttered, his voice barely a whisper. Vega nodded, a small, almost imperceptible acknowledgement of his remorse. "I know. That's why we didn't kill you. You didn't deserve this. But now you know. Now you understand." The reality of the situation was sinking in. The mission had been a lie from the beginning. The humans, those soft-skinned primates, had known more about survival, about truth, than he ever could have imagined. Veric had underestimated them, just as Nexus Corporation had underestimated the human spirit. "Your team has been decimated," Krell said quietly, almost as if to break the silence. "But the truth is, this isn't a fight we should have been part of." Veric's eyes locked onto the screen again. He stared at the data that confirmed the cure's existence, knowing that it was now out of their reach. It was clear Nexus Corporation had orchestrated this whole situation to maintain their hold on the plague, to continue selling their medical supplies to the colonies, profiting from the suffering of thousands. For the first time in his life, Veric felt small. Not in the sense of physical stature, he was still a towering figure in the galaxy, but in the sense of his understanding of the galaxy itself. He had always believed in the code of the mercenary: kill, take the money, move on. But now, he saw that there was so much more to the universe. And humans, against all odds, were the ones who had uncovered the truth. The mining facility on Tarsus IV stood in ruins, the dust swirling around the skeletal remains of what was once a bustling, industrial complex. Veric stood in the midst of the wreckage, his scales darkened with the weight of the decision he had to make. His remaining mercenaries were retreating, their confidence shattered, their pride broken. Krell, the ever-watchful lieutenant, stood beside him, his glowing cybernetic eye scanning the horizon. The battle was over, but the true war, the war for Veric's soul, was just beginning. Veric looked out over the facility, his eyes narrowing as he thought about the mission that had brought them here. His claws twitched involuntarily, the weight of his decision heavy on his mind. He had always been a soldier, someone who followed orders without question, someone who believed in the mission. But now, in the face of the truth, everything had changed. In the distance, Major Helena Vega and her team of humans stood, watching silently. They had no intention of killing the mercenaries. Their goal had never been to destroy for the sake of destruction, but to stop Nexus Corporation from continuing its exploitation. The humans, with all their strange ways and adaptability, had shown a level of resilience that no other species had ever possessed. They had faced a far greater challenge than the mercenaries could imagine, and now they stood as the protectors of life, not the destroyers. Krell's voice broke the silence, low and reflective. "You've seen it, Veric. You've seen who the true enemy is." Veric didn't answer immediately. His gaze remained fixed on the human soldiers, who were tending to their wounded with care and precision. They didn't revel in the destruction, they didn't celebrate victory. They simply did what was necessary to protect life. In that moment, Veric realized that his whole life, his whole career, had been a series of wrong choices, driven by a false understanding of what it meant to be a soldier, a warrior, a mercenary. "What do we do now?" Veric asked, his voice almost a whisper. Krell turned toward him, his cybernetic eye glowing faintly. "You have two options now: destroy the facility, follow orders, and continue the mission, or you can walk away and face the truth of what Nexus has done. The choice is yours." Veric clenched his fists, his claws digging into his palms. He could feel the heat rising in his chest as the anger bubbled up again. Destroy the facility, it was what he had been trained to do. The mission had been clear from the start: capture the facility and take the resources for Nexus. They had promised riches, promised to make him and his crew powerful. The 5 million credits had seemed like enough to wipe away any doubts. But now, it all felt so empty. The promise of wealth, the idea of taking something that didn't belong to them, it all felt hollow. The humans had shown him something greater, a purpose that transcended money, weapons, and violence. They had fought not for power, but for life. His heart thudded in his chest as he looked out at the facility, the research station that had been so carefully hidden behind the lies of Nexus. He thought of the cure the humans had been trying to protect, the cure for the plague that Nexus had created, a disease that had taken the lives of countless innocent beings across the colonies. He thought of the people who were suffering, and then of the profit Nexus would make from their pain. Greed, the most insidious force in the galaxy, had been the true enemy all along. Veric's claws flexed one last time. For the first time in his life, he didn't want to fight. He didn't want to destroy. "I choose to stand down," Veric said, his voice firm with a newfound resolve. "We're done. This mission, it ends here." Krell studied him for a moment, and then nodded, the faintest trace of approval in his gaze. "A wise decision, Commander." Veric's mind was racing as he turned toward the remaining mercenaries. His soldiers, those who had once followed him without question, now stood in disarray, unsure of what to do. Some were injured, others were still catching their breath after the traps the humans had set. They had been outmaneuvered, and now they had no clear direction. "We leave," Veric said to them, his voice carrying a weight of authority that he hadn't felt in years. "We walk away from this. There's no money, no glory. But there is something more important than that. Something we've lost sight of for far too long." The mercenaries, still shaken by the events, exchanged uncertain glances. But as Veric's words sunk in, they began to fall in line. They followed him, not as soldiers obeying orders, but as men and women making a decision together. They didn't know what the future held, but they knew one thing: the truth had been laid bare before them. Veric turned toward Major Vega, who was still watching them. She gave a small, almost imperceptible nod, one of acknowledgement, not of victory, but of mutual respect. He had chosen to leave, to walk away from the destruction, and to face the consequences of his actions. The world was not black and white, it was filled with shades of gray, where survival was often more about choices than strength. And in this moment, Veric understood that. He wasn't just a mercenary anymore. He was a man who had seen the light, a light that had been carried by the humans, not in their weapons or technology, but in their compassion. And in that, they had proven to him that humanity wasn't just a survivor of a harsh world. They were the most dangerous species in the galaxy, not because of their physical strength, but because of their purpose. As Veric walked away from the wreckage, he knew that humans were not just survivors. They were fighters, the most dangerous kind. And that made all the difference. As the story concludes, we are left with a powerful realization: humanity's greatest strength lies not in physical might, but in our adaptability, resilience, and the choices we make in the face of adversity. The galaxy may see us as fragile, but it is this very fragility that makes us survivors, capable of defying the odds and outsmarting even the most seasoned warriors. Commander Veric's journey has shown us that true power lies not in destruction, but in restraint and purpose. Humanity's ability to fight for what is right, even when the stakes are high, is what makes us dangerous, and it is this quality that will continue to shape the course of our future in the stars. If you found this story compelling, drop a comment below and let us know what you think about humanity's role in the universe. Do you believe we are the galaxy's true predators, or is there more to our strength than meets the eye? Don't forget to subscribe for more thrilling tales of love, war, and the unknown. Keep the conversation going, and let's explore the mysteries of the galaxy together. See you in the next adventure.